So welcome back to Boring Build Friday. Today we're talking about the most commonly overlooked part of any vehicle collision repair. Now this just isn't for backyard mechanics, this includes shops too. I see a lot that miss it. And that's restoring the corrosion protection. This is where the phrase that everybody loves comes from. Well, it looks great now, but what's it going to look like in a few years? Well, if you miss this step, it's probably going to be all rusted out like they expect. But if you do the step properly, the areas you repaired can actually look better than the parts of the vehicle that weren't repaired. I'll have some examples later on in this video that show you exactly what I mean. We got our terrain here that we've been working on. We're going to put a little corrosion protection in the areas we repaired. If you don't know what I'm talking about, link's up there. Let's get started. So this is what I normally use. You just hook it up to an air line. It connects to the top, clips on. When you squeeze the trigger, wax comes out of here in a 360-degree circle. Put it in the frame rails. Slowly work your way out of the frame rail. And as you do, it coats the whole inside of the frame rail. You don't necessarily have to buy all this stuff, especially if you're only going to do your car and you're going to do it once. No need to buy the applicator and a bottle that's probably enough to do more than one car. So you could buy this. These are at any local parts store, and I actually do use these inside doors that I'm going to show you. It's easier than trying to get that in there, and you want more of a direct spray for that area. There's no reason to coat everything. You can see exactly what you're getting into. The frame rails, you can't necessarily get into them, so you just have a little hole you have to get through. But for inside doors, you could see everything. You just spray it right on there, so I like to use these. But I did buy a wand kit for these, and what it does is it just replaces the top, and it's got 3 different length wands that are very similar to this at the end, so it's going to be able to spray inside the frame rail. So these are available at any parts store. I got 2 cans of the same stuff. There's other brands out there, and they're all pretty much the same. As far as I can tell, I haven't used anything that was horribly different. They're all just wax in an aerosol can. Some are thinner than others, some are thicker than others. I kind of like this. It thickens up, it's kind of thin, so it sprays on nice and it'll actually run a little bit, fill in and level out, and then it thickens up. And there's no need to reapply it that I've found. It doesn't really wash out. The water just kind of beads off of it, so you pretty much put this stuff in and let it go. So yeah, there's our materials. Let me show you how to put them in. So let's first get an idea of what we're actually going to be doing. We got our frame rail here with our floor welded on with tape. So we're just going to put the wand in there, press the little nozzle, and you'll see it spray out. And then we'll take this off and we'll see what it looks like inside. Okay, let's see what it looks like in here. So there you go, it coated it all the way around. Still a little runny, kind of running out the bottom there. So everything in there is completely rust proofed. Pretty easy, right? It's still a little wet and runny, but it'll thicken up over time. It'll stop running everywhere. But you can see it's got a nice good coating on everything. It's already starting to thicken up. Come back in a little bit and see what it looks like. So we're going to start with the parts we replaced, which were the frame rails. There's a good hole in here. Now I didn't drill any welds out here or anything, so at this point I'm just rust proofing it. I'm not restoring anything. I'm adding to it. But we're going to do the whole car. If anybody wants to buy this terrain in the future, just know that it got professionally rust proofed, or as professional as I am anyway. So now this panel is important. because we did weld all the way around this panel, so we need to get something in there. This one's pretty easy. It's got some big holes in here. If you don't want it getting everywhere, you can put tape over these holes. I don't really care if it sprays out, so. You might not want to do this in your driveway because it does kind of get everywhere, or you want to put some paper down underneath it because it does drip out of the holes and onto the ground. Now we're going to get up inside the frame rail here. There's a couple different ways. There's a hole up there, and I'm just going to feed it down and pull it back out. And that'll get everything in between. Okay, now we got all of our frame rails done, both sides, everything we replaced. So our repair should be better than the factory as far as corrosion protection in the future. So now we're gonna bring the rest of the car up to these levels. And I'll show you some of the spots to look out for that commonly rust. Remember, if you see the rust on the outside of the car, on the rockers, know that it started from the inside out. It's already too late. Unless you have a deep scratch on the outside of a panel, cars generally rust from the inside out, not the outside in. So now you guys are looking at the bottom of the car. And some of the areas that you want to watch out for are the frame rails that will run all the way from the front to the back. There's plenty of holes in here so we can get our wax in them and go all the way to the back of the car. And then the next big one, especially on GM cars, Fords, are the rockers. That's the rails on the outside, right underneath the doors. So there's plenty of holes in there too. So we're just gonna spray our wax on each side, front to back, coat them real good, the whole inside, and that should prevent any rust in the future on the bottom of the car. Okay, now that we got the bottom of the car done, let's go up top. Now we change these upper rails too, so we're gonna make sure we get those. The doors are another important part. We've all seen the rusty door seams at the bottoms of the doors. So I'm going to show you how to prevent that. First thing we're going to have to do is take the door panel off. A lot of the rust proofing places actually punch holes or drill holes and use the little wand to spray in there. But I feel like punching holes or drilling holes is just adding to the problem. You're disturbing the paint and giving it one more place to rust. So we're going to take the door panel off. It's really not that hard on most cars. Watch enough YouTube videos. There's a video for every door panel on every car on YouTube. So let's pull this one apart and we'll get started. We'll pop all the covers off and pull the 3 bolts out of it. Then just pull the door panel off. Now we can get to the door handle to disconnect it and to the plug for the wiring harness. And the door panel's off. Pull the water barrier back. So we want to be able to access this whole seam down here. This will get us the majority of the door, but there's nothing over here. So to be able to see that, we're going to pull the speaker out. Now we have full visibility of the whole bottom of the door seam. Hose it, rinse it out in there, and then blow it out with some air and get all the debris and dirt and dust and leaves and whatever else is in there out of there. I've already done that. We're ready to go. Now we just want to tape up the drain holes here. Otherwise the wax is going to come out there and make a big mess. So we're just going to tape these up. There's different numbers on every car. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 of them. Sometimes there's only 2. This just has the 2. For this, we don't necessarily need the little wand. We could just use the regular spray nozzle. So that's what I'm going to do. And a flashlight so I can see what I'm getting. So like I said, you'll want to leave the wand on there. I didn't like the way it was spraying, so I put the wand back on there. It was kind of misting everything, not really getting a direct spray, so that I can't get close enough to mist it in there. The stuff I normally use comes with a short nozzle, and it allows you to spray kind of a stream, and then it flows out, and that's what I'm used to using. Honestly, this is the first time I've ever used this particular brand. But yeah, we'll try this and see what happens. You can do the whole inside of the door if you desire. To me, I don't really think it's necessary. So I'm just going to do that bottom seam where the rust usually starts. You want to leave the tape on there. I would say for 24 hours, let it get good and solid and stop running everywhere. So try to keep the car inside, because if it rains, that's going to fill up with water, and then you're going to have your water and your wax not getting along. So I would keep it dry for 24 hours. It'll be solid by then. Pull your tape off and you're ready to go. If for some reason the wax does cover up the hole, you could just stick a pick in there and pull out some of the extra wax just so that the water can drain back out those holes. I don't know if you've ever heard of a car where those drain holes get plugged up and you hit the brakes and you hear water sloshing around in the doors. That's exactly what it's from. It usually happens a lot where people have trees. The leaves get in there and clog up the drain holes, and you end up with a little swimming pool in your door. Usually you could just poke the leaves out of there and water will come flooding out. Just an extra tip. The water barrier is kind of important. That's what this thing is. It keeps the water, when it does run inside the door, from splashing against like the regulator and inside the door panel and then inside the car. Some cars it's more important than others. Grand Ams, which I happen to do a lot of, it's very important to make sure they're sealed at the bottom, because they will flood the inside of the car. These, not so much. You could probably take it out and not have too much of a problem. But there are some other cars where they're very important. So if the factory puts them in, make sure you put them back. And while it's not super important that the top be sealed, it's very important that the bottom be sealed. That's why you saw me take the top down and leave the bottom on. I don't want to disturb it if I can help it. Now we're going to put the door panel on and move on. So now that we got our door panel back on, we're going to repeat that same procedure for the other 3 doors. We're also going to do the tailgate, and at a later time we're going to do the hood. I don't want to do the hood right now because it's got to be painted. Wax and paint don't get along, so I'll do that afterwards. But I can go ahead and do the tailgate and inside the quarter panels. Inside the quarter panels is very similar to the doors. Just pull back the trim panels and spray inside. Usually there's openings just like inside the doors. Every car is different. So just get in there any way you can. Use the wand if you have to get up over the wheel arches, because that's where most of your rust is going to come from, especially if you own a Ford. Get as much in there as you can. I put this rust proofing on every car I fix in the area I repair, even if it's a roof. Anywhere that's repaired. If I were to section this, I'd make sure I sprayed inside these pillars. You could even rust proof these if you want. They're generally not a trouble area, so I don't spend too much time. I try to hit the big areas: the doors, the frame rails, the rockers, trunks, and hoods. Those seams always seem to collect a lot of salt and dirt and moisture, and then they rot from the inside. Pillars, not so much, so I don't really worry about those. But like I said, if I did disturb anything in there, I put it in there even if it's not a problem area. So even my A, B, C, D, whatever pillars are sectioned, they're always coated on the inside. Now we're gonna add a little undercoating. Undercoating is not necessarily rust proofing. You can put the wax over bare metal and it will seal out any kind of moisture and keep it from rusting. If you put undercoating over bare metal, it will actually still rust. It doesn't block out the water. But what it does do is, behind me, it used to be black in this section from the factory, so that when you looked inside the wheel wells, you didn't see the silver. When we changed the frame rails and repainted it, we just painted it all silver. And my intention was, instead of painting it with black spray paint, to put the undercoating on. And what the undercoating does, it will prevent chips, rock chips, which inside the wheel well is a very good place to find rock chips. So the paint itself is actually the rust proofing. We're just protecting the paint. So we're just gonna spray on some undercoating, pretty simple. Now there are wheel liners that cover up the majority of that. Don't have to get too carried away because that's going to protect most of the rock chips. But that part, those parts there are exposed. So this just gave us our black finish and a little extra protection. Now we're in the rear wheel well and they didn't feel the need to paint this part black like they did in the front. But I do. So I'm going to undercoat this. This is the wheel liner that I was talking about. Similar one goes up in the front. So we're just gonna cover everything that you can see and give it a little extra protection. You can tape off this stuff if you want. It does help to clean this and scuff it up. It'll give the rust proofing something to stick to. But as easy as this stuff is, you could reapply it whenever you want. If you do notice it's starting to chip off. And if we wanted to, we could take the fender liner or the wheel liner out and get all behind it. I'll leave that up to you guys if that's something you want to do. To me, I don't really see the need. Oh yeah, might want to wear gloves too. Kind of does get everywhere. Doesn't matter to me. I'm in this industry, so my hands always look horrible. So if you wanted to take this off and it made you feel better and you wanted to spray it inside the wheel well, great. Not gonna hurt anything. But to me, I don't see the advantage, and I have other stuff to do and a video to make. But by all means, if you want to, go for it. So it's been 24 hours and our wax is totally dry. It's no longer tacky and it dried clear. It's got a nice coating to seal out all the moisture. Keep this rail from rotting out. Sealed up this cardboard real nice too. That's not going to rust either. Here's an example of how proper rust proofing after a repair can actually make it better than the original. This quarter panel was replaced many years ago by me, so I know how it was done, and I used the wand with the cavity wax. As you can see, the rocker is nice and solid, which is a problem area on these cars. But that quarter was welded on, so I went over it with my cavity wax. Now we're going to go to the other side. This side is all original. It did not fare so well with just the factory rust proofing. And it's actually worse underneath here. It starts at the rocker and works its way up, so you're actually seeing half of what's there. The bottom of the rocker is pretty rusted out. It's a common problem on these cars. Had they put wax in it when it was brand new, it'd probably look just like the other side and look just like new. a repaired car can actually be better than an original if done right, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. So how important is rust proofing? Well, if you're in the south, it's not too important. If you're up here in the Rust Belt, it's pretty important. So I have a tale of two trucks. Both are the same age, both are GM products. That one was rust proofed, that one wasn't. Both are plow trucks driven in the same area for the same amount of time. That one's got a few more miles on it. But let's take a look at them and see what they look like. See what the rust proofing actually did for us. So let's start with the non-rust proof truck. Typical GM rust. Rockers that pretty much no longer exist. Those used to be steps. They rotted out long ago. We got some rust over the wheel arches. We're not going to be able to see that on the other truck because it has flares on it, but they're pretty clean. Little rust on the wheel well and the fender. And our rocker that no longer exists. Now we're on to the white truck. So here's our rocker. Now keep in mind this one did have rust proofing. It's starting to rust a little bit on the surface. But considering this truck has 3 times the amount of miles as the other truck, it probably saw a lot more salt. And definitely looks a lot better. This one's still salvageable. You could buy that out a rocker piece and replace it, no problem. So here's the passenger side. Pretty much the same. So like this video if you found it interesting, or maybe even a little helpful. Share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe to see more tutorials like this, my rebuild series, or whatever else I have coming up. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.